Hello. I've had a bit of trouble with my camera, so I'm aware that this camera that I'm using now is not the best or the most efficient or even gives me the right colour balance, but it really is the best I could do after about an hour of fiddling about. So I do hope you'll forgive the lack of sophistication in this particular one. Maybe I can sort out something when I'm editing the video. All right, well, I don't know who said it, but there is an ancient saying that whom the gods wish to destroy, they first drive mad. And we have a very good example of this here in the Scottish National Party, which seems to have gone completely mad. Now, I saw this clip and actually I thought it was a joke, and then I did some checking out, and we have here on Breitbart, it says here, Scottish government workers told biological sex is falsehood invented to reinforce white supremacy. And now, as a matter of fact, I think the Scottish National Party might be taking this whole white supremacy thing a little too seriously. And they may have been listening to this chap and taking what he said to heart. I'll put his video up here. I've just remembered it. So,
but why are we so surprised when the most senior positions in Scotland are filled almost exclusively by those who are white? Take my portfolio alone. The Lord President, white. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white. The Chief Constable, white. Every Deputy Chief Constable, white. Every Assistant Chief Constable, white. The Head of the Law Society, white. The Head of the Faculty of Advocates, white. Every Prison Governor, white. And not just Justice. The Chief Medical Officer, white. The Chief Nursing Officer, white. The Chief Veterinary Officer, white. The Chief Social Work Advisor, white. Almost every trade union in this country headed by people who are white. In the Scottish Government, every Director General is white. Every chair of every public body is white. That is not good enough.
Anyway, yeah, so they sat there in their Scottish National... in their debating chamber or wherever in Holyrood, and they listened to that guy insulting them with all aspects of politeness and compliance. And then apparently they're doing this here. Well, these attractive young ladies here are obviously saying that biology is not destiny. Well, in their case, I'd say biology isn't even relevant. But that's just my opinion. Scottish civil servants have been instructed that biological sex is a falsehood which was set by the medical establishment. So any of you doctors, nurses or just general health workers should know that you have been participating in a colossal lie for your entire working lives. Bit like politicians actually, which was set by the medical establishment to reinforce white supremacy and gender oppression. The taxpayer-funded LGBTI plus internal staff network of the Scottish Government. I mean, they have a whole sort of internal network here. A devolved administration, roughly equivalent to a state government in the US, was allowed to carry out its Trans 101 course for civil servants during work time. So any of you who are watching this in Scotland, I hope you're really glad that this is what your heavy taxes are going towards, instead of the education budget, which is apparently quite a bit of a problem in Scotland right now. OK, was allowed to carry out its Trans 101 course for civil servants during work time, promoting what critics described as a highly political and discriminatory material in comments to The Telegraph. Now, a trans language primer poured particular scorn on so-called TERFs, or trans exclusionary radical feminists, and it suggested that they should be rechristened as, I'm not going to read that, or feminism appropriating ridiculous transphobes. Now, you notice how they had to put the ridiculous in there, which means they're showing not what these people are, but what they think of these people. And in order to be able to come up with a rude word. I mean, this is 12-year-old stuff, you know, it's the sort of thing little kids come up with when they think they're being very naughty. The problem with Scotland is it is reverting in age, I think, to some sort of kindergarten childhood. And the idea is that Scotland's going to be the naughty little boy and it's going to embarrass the po-faced parent who lives in Whitehall and comes up with laws, proper laws. And you could actually see this from the beginning when the Scottish National Party took their seats in Parliament at the very first. There was a very embarrassing situation where they all sort of piled in, literally like naughty school children, and got into the seats of more established politicians and just sat there with this look on their face as if to say, well, you can't do anything about it now. And that childishness has continued, and it has got worse. It's got worse in the fact that they are now, as government policy, saying that, what is it? Hang on a minute, I'll go back. They are, as government policy, they're saying that biological sex is a falsehood cooked up by white supremacists and doctors. And they've thought up rude names for people who disagree with them, which is, oh yeah, very mature. And here, so a trans language primer, which is apparently what they've come up with. TERFs are transphobes loosely organised into a trans hate group who have an obsession with trans people in sports. The primer asserts. So that means that any woman who thinks that a man who has decided that he wants to be called a woman, even if he hasn't had any surgery, let alone if he hasn't made allowance for his larger frame and denser bones and stronger muscles and all the rest of it, then these women are, well, yeah, the rude word. And they have an obsession with trans people. Well, while they hate all trans people, yeah, here you see, I am one of those people who disagree with men dressed as women competing in women's sports. So that makes me one of their hate group. And it says here that they hate all trans people. So it's telling me I hate all trans people. All you have to do is look through my previous videos to find out my attitude to that, by the way. I'm not going to waste the time defending myself against these guys here. They attack trans women especially aggressively as trans women challenge TERF's view of biological essentialism around the identity and experience of womanhood. I don't know what they mean actually, what biological essentialism is around the identity and experience of womanhood, but I think, I may be wrong, and maybe one of these guys might tell me. I think what they're saying is that I view being a woman as a sort of exclusive club to which men cannot belong. And they're right. Now, there is, as I have to keep on saying, there are some men who transition to women. They go through the awful series of operations and the commitment to medicalisation, and they wish to live as women and they wish to keep their heads down and just live their lives. And I have absolutely no objection to those guys or girls, none at all. I would object to them taking part in competitive sport against other women, though, because if they were men, then they will be physiologically different, and this will give them an advantage. That's just the way it is. You know, but according to these guys, my worries about that it mean that I hate all trans people, and they're accusing us of straw manning, isn't it? In addition to dismissing biological sex as falsehood, the training took issue with the outdated terms biological men and biological women, and even male-bodied and female. You know, this is nonsense. Now, first of all, here you are, here's that nice thing there, and they're hoping that that will, you know, shut people up. Well, they are naughty children, and that's the way they're acting. And they're acting like naughty children who want to make mummy angry or daddy angry, and then they can cry and say they're being bullied. I'm sorry to say, it's part of the Scottish independence nonsense. Look, the Scottish National Party, the belief that Scotland can be independent of the United Kingdom is a surrender to unreality. That's my opinion. I know there are some Scots who think Scotland can be independent. I don't see how that's even possible. It has very few resources. It has one single resource, and that resource is being phased out in many countries anyway. And it just doesn't seem that the Scots can manage themselves in many ways. I mean, if they're going to surrender to this sort of unreality, then it means that there's an attitude in Scotland, that there's an attitude abroad among the Scots that has no relationship to the real world. Now, obviously, there are many Scottish people who don't go for this, but I'm afraid you are voting for people who come up with this stuff. So it matters little if you don't believe in it or not. You're prepared to encourage it. You were prepared to vote for this man who was shouting and screaming about everybody in Scotland being white. You were prepared to countenance that. You should forgive the expression. So if you're prepared to go for those people, then you only have yourselves to blame when you've got this stuff coming up as well. It's a party that wants to come up with a totally unrealistic idea of independence, and in its madness of what it wants against what can be achieved, it's prepared to go for this as well. I'm sorry, Scots, but this is a mess of your own making. How you're going to get out of it, how we're all going to get out of this, I really can't see. You know, a lot of Scotland, some people who, I'm probably going to get nasty comments about this, but for people who aren't involved in this, you know, like you guys in America or Australia or whatever, New Zealand, there's something called the Barnett formula, and basically it means that money goes to Scotland from places like London, which is the highest earning area of Britain, and it just goes over. And so when I go to visit relatives in Scotland, there are beautiful roads and hardly anybody on them. Whereas in London, everything's very crowded and in a bad state of repair. And that's because the money is going there. Well, the Scottish government thinks it can manage without England, and the Scottish government thinks that gender or sex is a biological fairy story thought up by doctors. You're not going to get very far that way, I'm afraid, Scotland. And I don't know how you're going to manage it, but you've got to get rid of that government. You've got to get rid of those naughty children that you've elected because you hate the English so much. As has often been said, when you base any sort of a system on how much you hate somebody else, you end up hurting yourself more than you hurt the other people. All right, well, I'm Granniopteryx. I'm to be found on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I let you know when I've uploaded a video using my social media platforms. That's at granniopteryx on Twitter or Gab or Parler. Subscribe to one of those and you won't miss a notification, because I know that YouTube very often does miss notifications. Please like this video. Please send it to any Scots you know. Please share, subscribe. Yeah, you know, you may think you subscribed. Just check that out, because that falls by the wayside as well. And contribute to the channel if you can. And again, if there's a problem with colour by the time I've uploaded this video, it's not me turning green or blue because of Scottish behaviour. It's the temporary camera. Sorry about that. Okay, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Granbo, with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share, share, share.